The battle-hardened alien saw me and fell to her knees. I never expected why. The recognition. Elliot Thorne had been fighting long enough to know when he was about to die. The telltale signs were all there, the acrid tang of iodized plasma hanging in the air, the eerie silence that followed sustained bombardment, and the peculiar sense of calm that washed over him like a narcotic. His combat suit's integrity hovering at a measly 18%, right arm hydraulics completely shot, and tactical display flickering between life and death like a bad omen. "This is how it ends," he muttered through cracked lips, tasting blood and something metallic that probably wasn't supposed to be inside his mouth. Behind a half-melted supply crate on a planet I can't even pronounce. Around him, the battlefield of Proxima Centauri's fourth moon, locally called Netherheim by the colonists who'd abandoned it months ago, smoldered under twin violet suns. The Terran coalition forces had been pushed back to their final defensive line after 3 days of relentless assault from the Corvarii hegemony. Their towering exoframes and bio-augmented soldiers had torn through human defenses like wolves through sheep. Elliot's squad, what was left of it, had scattered during the last orbital strike. Private Jessup's biosigns had flatlined 30 minutes ago, and Lieutenant Rhodes was either dead or smart enough to play dead. The comms crackled with desperate chatter and automated distress signals that nobody was coming to answer. He checked his pulse rifle, power cell at 3%, barely enough for one good shot. Might as well make it count, he said to no one in particular, a habit he'd picked up during his 6 years on the front lines. Then he heard it. The distinctive heavy footfalls of a Corvarii battle commander's exoframe. The sound sent ice through his veins even as sweat beaded on his forehead. These weren't ordinary soldiers, they were the elite, genetically engineered from birth, neural pathways designed for warfare the way human children were designed to learn language. Elliot peered around the edge of his makeshift cover, and his breath caught. The commanders stood nearly 8 feet tall, silver-blue armor gleaming despite the battle grime. Unlike the standard Corvarii warriors with their utilitarian plating, commander armor was an art form, angular plates flowing into organic curves, bioluminescent conduits pulsing with energy. This one's helmet bore the distinctive crest of Talon Battalion, the most feared unit in the hegemony's arsenal. Of course, Elliot laughed bitterly, couldn't just be a regular grunt coming to finish me off. He readied his rifle, knowing it was futile but unwilling to die without at least trying. The commander moved with liquid grace despite the heavy armor, scanning the battlefield methodically. Elliot noticed the weapon in its grasp, not the standard-issue particle disruptor but something unique. A blade of some sort, humming with energy, leaving a trail of azure light as it moved. Elliot took a deep breath, sent a silent apology to his sister Rosalind back on New Mars, and stood up. "Hey! Over here, you oversized lobster." The commander whipped around with impossible speed, those alien reflexes making human reaction time look prehistoric by comparison. But then, something entirely unexpected happened. The commander froze. Completely, utterly froze, as if struck by some invisible force. The battle blade dipped, its deadly hum diminishing to a whisper. Elliot stayed tense, finger on the trigger, waiting for some kind of trick. But the Corvarii just stared at him through that inscrutable helmet visor. Then, with movements that seemed almost reverent, the commander reached up and disengaged the helmet seal. The face that emerged was unmistakably Corvarii, angular features, opalescent skin with faint scale patterns along the temples, eyes of solid violet without pupil or iris. But it was unmistakably female, with an elegance that cut through the alien differences. A jagged scar ran from her left temple to jaw, interwoven with glowing tech filaments. Those eyes, those impossible violet eyes, widened in what could only be described as shock. And then she spoke his name. Elliot Thorne. Not his rank. Not a threat. His name, spoken with a familiarity that chilled him more than any battle cry. "How do you," he began, but his words were cut short as the commander dropped her blade. It struck the rubble with a subdued finality. The battlefield fell eerily silent, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. In the distance, Elliot could hear explosions and weapons fire, but in their little pocket of the war, time seemed suspended. She took a step forward. Elliot raised his rifle higher. "Don't," he warned, though they both knew the weapon was nearly dead. "You don't remember me," she said. Not a question, but a statement layered with something that sounded almost like grief. "Remember you? Lady, I definitely remember meeting an 8-foot alien killing machine who knows my name." The moment shattered as human reinforcements surged over a nearby ridge. 3 Pathfinder-class assault vehicles, their pulse cannons already charging. "Target disarmed. Take the commander alive," someone shouted through an amplified comm. The Corvarii never looked away from Elliot, even as stun nets deployed around her. She made no move to escape or fight back. Before the nets engulfed her, she spoke again, her voice penetrating the chaos with disturbing clarity. "Find me after. Remember." Then the stun field activated, and she collapsed, unconscious but still somehow dignified even in defeat. Elliot stood there, pulse rifle forgotten in his hands, as medical drones swarmed around him, assessing damage and administering emergency stabilizers. A field medic was saying something about shock and possible neural damage, but Elliot barely registered the words. All he could think about was the way she had said his name. Like she was seeing a ghost. "Again, Private Thorne. What exactly did the Corvarii commander say to you?" Colonel Winslow Herrick was a man composed entirely of sharp angles and sharper patience. His cybernetic left eye whirred softly as it adjusted focus, scanning Elliot's face for micro-expressions as if he were just another battlefield to analyze. They sat in a sterile debriefing room aboard the TSV Horizon, the medical wing's attempt at creating a relaxing environment undermined by the harsh lighting and the faint smell of antiseptic that seemed embedded in the walls. Elliot shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His arm was encased in a regenerative cast that occasionally whispered anatomical updates in a soothing voice that managed to be more unsettling than helpful. "She knew my name, sir. Just said, Elliot Thorne, like we were old friends or something. And then she said, 'You don't remember me,' and right before your Pathfinder stunned her, she said, 'Find me after. Remember.'" Herrick's expression didn't change, but his organic eye narrowed slightly. "Nothing else? No codes? No reference to coalition operations or intelligence?" "No, sir. That was it." The colonel tapped something into his neural interface, the faint blue glow behind his ear pulsing as data transferred. "You understand how unusual this is, Private. A Corvarii battle commander, not just any commander, but Nixera of the Talon Battalion, surrendering without resistance after seeing your face." Elliot blinked. "She has a name. They all have names, Private. We just don't usually get close enough to exchange pleasantries before they tear us apart." Herrick stood, straightening his immaculate uniform. "You're being transferred." "Transferred?" "Sir, my unit is being reassigned anyway. 3 days' worth of casualties has effectively dissolved your battalion. You're going to Special Projects Division, Outpost Theta. There's a transport leaving in 2 hours. Special Projects? I'm just infantry, sir. I don't have any special training that would. This isn't a request, Thorne. It's a direct order. Something about this situation has triggered about 16 different classified protocols, and now you're part of it." Herrick's tone softened marginally. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Once you enter SPD's jurisdiction, I can't help you." As the colonel turned to leave, Elliot called after him. "Sir. The commander, Nixera. What's going to happen to her?" Herrick paused at the door. "She'll be interrogated, studied. Corvarii commanders don't surrender, Thorne. The last time we captured one alive was 6 years ago, and that was after reducing half their nervous system to jelly. Whatever connection she thinks she has to you is valuable intelligence." After the colonel left, Elliot stared at his reflection in the polished surface of the table. The face that looked back was haggard, a 3-day growth of beard shadowing hollow cheeks, eyes too old for his 32 years. What could an alien warlord possibly see in him that would make her lay down arms? The regenerative cast chirped cheerfully. Bone fusion at 42% and accelerating. Your calcium levels are exceptional today. Elliot sighed. At least someone's happy. The remembering. The lights in Outpost Theta's detention level flickered with the precise regularity of a metronome, counting down seconds that felt increasingly precious to Elliot Thorne. 3 days had passed since his confrontation with Nyxera and Dr. Marsh's revelation about his origins. 3 days of tests, brain scans, and questions that probed at memories he wasn't sure were even his anymore. He sat on the edge of his assigned quarters, a sterile box that pretended to be accommodation but was clearly another form of cell, staring at his hands. They were calloused in places that matched his service record, scarred in ways that told stories he remembered living. But were they his stories? Or echoes from a dead man? Bone fusion complete, chirped his regenerative cast. Would you like a celebratory tune? Please don't, Elliot muttered, but the cast had already begun warbling an off-key version of a Martian military hymn. He sighed and began the removal sequence, peeling away the synthetic material to reveal perfectly healed skin beneath. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. The door slid open to reveal Dr. Marsh, looking more disheveled than he'd seen her before. Her usually immaculate lab coat was wrinkled, and strands of gray hair had escaped her severe bun. They're transferring her, she said without preamble. Central Command is moving Nyxera to the deep interrogation facility on Europa. Elliot stood. When? Transport leaves in 2 hours. Once she's there. Dr. Marsh hesitated. They won't be gentle, Thorne. Europa is where they take subjects they don't expect to keep alive. Why are you telling me this? Elliot studied her face, searching for some hidden agenda. Dar. Marsh's expression shifted, scientific detachment giving way to something more complicated. Because I've spent 20 years studying neural architecture, and what I found in your scans and hers is unlike anything I've ever seen. The resonance patterns between your minds, it's not just compatible, it's complementary. Perfect symmetry. Like two halves of something. More like two complete systems that somehow enhance each other. She handed him a small data chip. I'm not supposed to show you this, but these are your brain scans from 6 years ago, right after the implantation procedure. Elliot inserted the chip into the room's holographic projector. 2 brains materialized in the air before him, one clearly human, one with the distinctive elongated frontal lobe of a corvarii. Swirls of colored light represented neural activity, dancing in patterns that occasionally synchronized with stunning precision. The blue is you, or rather, the original Elliot Thorne. The green is Nyxera, Dr. Marsh explained. This was recorded during a joint tactical simulation. Watch what happens when they face a crisis point. The colored patterns suddenly accelerated, blue and green lights merging into a brilliant teal that pulsed with impossible complexity. They're thinking as one, Elliot whispered. More than that. They're thinking beyond what either could achieve alone. Dr. Marsh's voice dropped lower. The military wanted to weaponize it, of course. Create perfect soldier pairs. But they couldn't replicate it. Something about their specific connection was unique. When the original Thorne died, they tried to salvage what they could through you. Elliot watched the dance of lights slow as the simulation ended. Why are you telling me this now? Because I joined this project to understand the frontiers of consciousness, not to watch them torture and dissect the most remarkable neural connection we've ever discovered. Dr. Marsh pulled something else from her pocket, a security badge. Outpost security changes shifts in 20 minutes. There's a maintenance corridor that leads directly to the detention level. Elliot stared at her. You want me to break her out? That's treason. Perhaps. Or perhaps it's science. She placed the badge on his bed. I've dedicated my life to understanding how minds work, Thorne. And I know that yours will never be complete without understanding what's missing. After she left, Elliot sat motionless, staring at the security badge. His training, whether his own or implanted, screamed that this was wrong. But something deeper, something he couldn't name, pulled him toward another choice. The cast, still attached to his wrist though no longer needed, suddenly spoke in a voice that wasn't its standard cheerful tone. Security override Theta 9 Echo, it said in a flat monotone. Maintenance drone T4L3 online and awaiting instructions. Elliot nearly jumped out of his skin. What the hell? The cast detached itself fully, unfolding into a small, spindly maintenance drone with bulbous optical sensors. It wobbled unsteadily, like a newborn animal finding its legs. T4L3 Service Unit, designation, Tinker, at your service, it chirped, now back to an enthusiastic tone. Dr. Marsh indicated you might require assistance with facility navigation and security systems. She built you into my cast? Elliot asked incredulously. Multi-purpose medical devices are standard protocol. I am simply a very multi-purpose purpose. Tinker spun in a little circle. Shall we commit several serious violations of security protocol? My ethical subroutines are temporarily experiencing a delightful malfunction. Despite everything, Elliot found himself smiling. Yeah, I guess we are. The maintenance corridors of Outpost Theta were a labyrinth of exposed circuitry and humming service pipes. Tinker scuttled ahead, occasionally interfacing with security nodes to temporarily blind cameras or redirect patrol routes. For a machine cobbled together inside a medical device, it was remarkably effective. How much further to detention? Elliot whispered as they ducked into an alcove to avoid a repair crew. Approximately 47 meters. Tinker replied cheerfully. Also, facility alerts indicate the prisoner transport has been moved up by 37 minutes. Haste would be advisable. Elliot cursed under his breath. They reached the detention level access panel, and Tinker extended a spindly appendage to interface with the lock. This security system is asking very personal questions about my manufacturer, the drone complained. Very rude. Almost got it. The panel slid open, revealing the sterile white corridor of the high-security detention wing. Two guards stood outside Nixera's cell, their postures suggesting boredom rather than alertness. I need a distraction, Elliot muttered. Calculating optimal distraction parameters. Tinker performed what could only be described as an excited little dance. Executing Operation Dramatic Overreaction. Before Elliot could stop it, the tiny drone shot out into the corridor, its servos suddenly emitting a high-pitched wail. It spun in erratic circles, sparks flying dramatically from its joints. Catastrophic coolant failure, it screeched. Imminent meltdown. All personnel evacuate. This is not a drill. The guards exchanged alarmed glances before rushing toward the wildly spinning drone. One of them activated his comm unit. Possible security breach in detention, requesting backup and hazmat. That was all Elliot needed. He slipped from the maintenance corridor and approached the cell controls from behind. Dr. Marsh's security badge worked perfectly, and the cell door slid open with a soft hiss. Nixera sat exactly as he had last seen her, cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed in meditation. But the moment he entered, those violet eyes snapped open. You remembered, she said simply. Not yet, Elliot replied, extending his hand. But I'm working on it. We need to move, now. She rose in one fluid motion. The others? One guard down, one distracted. But we've got maybe 3 minutes before this place is swarming. Nixera nodded, then did something unexpected. She placed her palm against the wall and closed her eyes. The security panel next to her cell sparked, and suddenly alarms began blaring throughout the facility. What did you do? Elliot demanded. Created confusion, she replied calmly. Every cell on this level just opened. The guards will be occupied. They moved into the corridor where Tinker was still putting on an impressive show of imminent mechanical catastrophe. The drone spotted them and immediately ceased its dramatics. Mission objective achieved. Switching to escape protocols. It scurried toward them. I have identified an unused shuttle bay on level 4. Lead the way, Elliot said, noticing that Nixera was studying the little drone with what might have been amusement. You always did attract unusual allies, she remarked as they followed Tinker into the chaos of the detention block. The shuttle bay was ancient, clearly part of the original asteroid mining operation before the military had repurposed the facility. A single maintenance craft sat gathering dust, its hull marked with faded industrial logos. Can you fly this thing? Elliot asked as Tinker worked to override the bay doors. Nixera examined the controls with professional interest. Corvarii neural architecture includes comprehensive spatial reasoning and mechanical adaptation. Also, she added with the faintest hint of humor, I have stolen 17 human vessels in my military career. Great, so you're experienced. Elliot couldn't help but smile despite their desperate situation. As the engines hummed to life, Tinker suddenly emitted a warning beep. Multiple security personnel converging on our location. Estimating arrival in 43 seconds. Where are we going? Elliot asked as they strapped in. Nixera's fingers danced across the control panel with practiced efficiency. There is a place where answers wait. A decommissioned research archive in the belt. The original Mnemosyne data is there, and with it, the key to your fragmented memories. The bay doors began to open, revealing the star-flecked void beyond. Just as the first security officers burst into the bay, plasma rifles raised, the shuttle shot forward into open space. Elliot felt a strange sense of déjà vu watching Nixera pilot, her movements precise yet somehow familiar. You've done this before, he said. With him. Many times, she confirmed, not taking her eyes off the controls. He taught me to pilot human craft. I taught him Corvarii battle meditation. And you were more than colleagues. Her hands paused momentarily. We were an impossibility that became real. The first true bridge between our species, not through treaties or trade, but through understanding. Through. She searched for the word, connection. As they accelerated away from Outpost Theta, automated defense systems tracking their escape vector, Elliot felt something stir in the recesses of his mind. Not a memory, exactly, but the shadow of one, like remembering a dream upon waking. I feel like I should know you, he admitted. Like there's something just out of reach. Nixera engaged the FTL drive, and stars smeared into luminous streaks around them. Soon, she promised. Soon you will remember. The journey took 16 hours through FTL corridors rarely traveled by military or commercial vessels. Tinker spent most of it exploring every corner of the small craft and providing unnecessary but enthusiastic updates on system functions. Hull integrity at 92.4%. Significantly above minimum safety requirements but below optimal parameters. We are adequately not doomed. Elliot passed the time questioning Nixera about his supposed previous life, though she answered sparingly, claiming that too much information before he was ready could damage his neural pathways. The memories must reintegrate naturally, she explained. They are there, buried beneath layers of suppression and artificial constructs. And what if I don't want them? Elliot finally asked the question that had been haunting him. What if I'm happy being who I am now? Nixera regarded him with those fathomless violet eyes. You are not complete. You feel it, the gaps, the inconsistencies in your purpose. The original Elliot Thorne volunteered for Mnemosyne because he believed understanding between our species was the only path to peace. His memories, his experiences with me, might hold the key to ending a war that has consumed millions of lives. Before Elliot could respond, Tinker announced their arrival. Approaching coordinates. Behold, a very abandoned and slightly forbidding space station. The archive hung in the void like a forgotten monument, a cylindrical structure covered in communication arrays and observation domes, all dark save for the faint blue glow of emergency power systems. It orbited a dwarf star so old it barely cast any light, a burnt-out ember of a sun. No defensive systems detected. Tinker chirped. Either excellent news or concerning evidence that anything of value has been removed. They docked at a maintenance airlock, the shuttle's systems barely compatible with the archive's outdated interfaces. As they prepared to board, Nixera paused. What awaits inside may be difficult, she warned. The neural reconnection process is not without risk. What kind of risk? Elliot asked. Identity dissonance. Personality fragmentation. Or complete neural rejection. Death, you mean? Yes. Her honesty was brutal but somehow comforting. But the Elliot I knew would consider it worth the risk. He checked the charge on the sidearm he'd taken during their escape. Well, let's hope I'm still enough like him to not regret this. The archive's interior was a labyrinth of data servers and research stations, everything covered in a fine layer of dust. Emergency lighting cast blue shadows across abandoned workstations where coffee cups still sat, their contents long evaporated into crusty residue. This place was evacuated in a hurry, Elliot observed. After the neural plague outbreak on Callisto, many research facilities were abandoned, Nixera explained. This one housed the most sensitive data from Project Mnemosyne, too valuable to destroy, too dangerous to keep in active facilities. They made their way deeper into the station, Tinker leading the way and interfacing with dormant systems to restore partial power. Finally, they reached a circular chamber at the heart of the archive. A single chair sat in the center, surrounded by neural interface equipment that looked both advanced and somehow medieval in its brutality. The Mnemosyne cradle, Nixera said quietly. Where memories were extracted, studied, and transferred. Elliot approached it warily. You're telling me I need to sit in that thing? It is the only way to access the buried data in your mind and integrate it with the archive's stored memory patterns. Tinker scuttled around the equipment, surprisingly capable as it began activating long-dormant systems. Neural pathways connecting. Power levels adequate. Probability of catastrophic brain function cessation only 37.8%. That's not reassuring, Elliot muttered. As the systems hummed to life, data screens illuminating around the chamber, Nixera approached him. Without her imposing battle armor, moving with that fluid grace that seemed both alien and familiar, she radiated a presence that commanded attention. Before you proceed, she said, you should know that the original Elliot Thorne was not just a soldier or a scientist. He was the one who first discovered that Corvarii and humans could share consciousness without destroying each other. He volunteered himself as the first human subject. And you were his counterpart, Elliot finished. Yes. We were enemies who chose to understand rather than destroy. What we discovered threatened everything both our species believed about the impossibility of peace. She reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away, and placed her palm against his cheek. The touch sent an electric shock through his system, not painful, but intense, like a circuit completing. Our minds touched, and neither of us was ever the same. Her voice grew softer. We found harmony where there should have been discord. Elliot wanted to ask more, but the moment was interrupted by Tinker's excited announcement. Systems fully operational. Neural cradle ready for memory integration attempt. Nixera stepped back. The choice is yours. Elliot looked at the chair, then back at the Corvarii commander who had surrendered a war to find him. Who claimed to know him better than he knew himself. If I do this, if I remember, what happens then? Do I just become him? No, she said firmly. You are your own self now, with your own experiences. The memories will integrate, not override. You will be more than either him or who you are now. You will be complete. Elliot took a deep breath and sat in the neural cradle. Let's find out who I am, then. The interface activated, neural connectors extending to touch his temples. Tinker monitored the systems, occasionally making adjustments and offering percentages that Elliot tried to ignore. Nixera stood nearby, her expression unreadable but her posture tense with anticipation. Initiating neural archive connection, Tinker announced. Synchronization commencing in 3, 2, 1. The world dissolved into fragments of light and sensation. Elliot was no longer in the chair, no longer in his body. He floated in a sea of memory, some familiar, some utterly foreign. He saw himself in battles he'd fought, but from slightly different angles. He felt emotions attached to faces he'd never seen. And then she was there, Nixera, but younger, without the scar that now marked her face. They stood in a laboratory not unlike the archive chamber, both connected to primitive versions of the neural cradle. "It won't work," she said, doubt heavy in her voice. "Our neural architectures are too different." "That's exactly why it might," he heard himself respond, though it wasn't quite his voice. "Different doesn't mean incompatible. It means complementary." The scene shifted. They were on a battlefield, but fighting side by side, not against each other. His body, the original Elliot's body, moved with a precision that came from sharing consciousness with a Corvarii warrior. Her strategies flowed through his mind as his human intuition guided her strength. Memories cascaded faster, secret meetings with military officials who wanted to weaponize their connection, late nights analyzing data while their minds remained partially linked, creating a comfortable background hum of shared consciousness, the first time their connection transcended the professional and became something neither species had vocabulary to describe. Then came Callisto. The neural plague that ravaged the research station. They had gone to investigate, to see if their unique connection offered immunity. He was dying. The plague ate through human neural tissue like acid, leaving nothing but pain and fragmented thoughts. She held him, her own mind reaching desperately through their connection to stabilize his. "Don't let them erase me," he whispered. "Promise me." "I promise," she replied, violet eyes filled with an emotion no human had ever seen from a Corvarii before. "I will find you, whatever remains." The memory dissolved into chaos as security forces separated them, quarantined him, began emergency procedures to extract what they could from his failing mind before it was gone forever. Then darkness. Then rebirth, but incomplete. Training as a regular soldier. A life constructed around the hollow core where something vital had been removed. With a gasp, Elliot returned to himself in the neural cradle, tears streaming down his face. The memories weren't just data now, they were his, integrated with everything he had lived since. He was both men, the pioneering scientist who had connected with an alien mind, and the soldier who had fought without knowing why the war felt so fundamentally wrong. He opened his eyes to find Nixera kneeling before him, her hands gently supporting his head. Those violet eyes searched his face anxiously. "Elliot?" she asked, and in that single word was a universe of question. He reached up, his fingers finding the scar on her face, tracing it just as he remembered doing when it was still fresh. "You got this saving my life on Eridani Station," he said softly. "You took a plasma blade meant for me." Her eyes widened, a shimmering violet with emotions no human language had words for. "You remember. Not everything. But enough." He smiled, the expression feeling both familiar and new. "Enough to know why you found me. Why you couldn't kill me on that battlefield." "Some bonds transcend death," she said simply. "Even incomplete, even fragmented, you were still you underneath." Tinker circled them excitedly. Neural integration successful. Identity coherence at 89%. This is significantly better than expected for experimental consciousness restoration. Elliot stood shakily, supported by Nixera's steady hand. The world seemed different now, richer, more complex, filled with understanding that bridged two lives. What now? We're still fugitives. There's still a war. Now we finish what we started, Nixera said, determination hardening her features. We have what the original research lacked, proof that the connection can survive even death and rebirth. Proof that understanding between our species isn't just possible, it's inevitable. You think anyone will listen to a deserter and a captured enemy commander? They will listen to the data. She gestured around them. This archive contains everything, the full research, the results, the potential. With your restored memories and my testimony, we can prove that the war is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of compatibility. Elliot felt something he hadn't experienced in either of his lives, hope that made complete sense. So we steal a copy of the archive and go, where? Who would even give us a hearing? The Proxima Neutral Colony, Nixera said. Scientists from both species still work together there, protected by ancient treaties. It is where we first met, in another life. As they gathered what they needed from the archive, copying crucial data while Tinker cheerfully assisted, Elliot felt the weight of two lives settling into a new balance within him. He was neither fully the man who had died in Nixera's arms nor completely the soldier who had fought against her kind. He was something new, a bridge, just as their research had intended. You know, he said as they prepared to leave, in my memories, I see that we were more than just research partners. Nixera paused, her expression softening in a way that would have been impossible to read before his memories returned. We were an anomaly. A possibility neither species was prepared to accept. And now? Now we are still an anomaly, she said, the corner of her mouth lifting in what he now recognized as her version of a smile. But perhaps the galaxy is finally ready for anomalies. As their stolen shuttle pulled away from the archive, setting course for Proxima Centauri and whatever future awaited them there, Elliot felt for the first time like a complete person, not because he had recovered all his memories, but because he finally understood his purpose. Tinker, nestled between them in the cockpit, swiveled its optical sensors from one to the other. Probability calculations suggest our survival odds are minimal and our success parameters questionable, it announced cheerfully. However, my emotion simulation subroutines indicate this is what humans call romantic, and therefore worth doing anyway. Elliot laughed, the sound echoing in the small cabin. Beside him, Nixera's eyes shimmered with violet light, her hand finding his across the console, alien and familiar all at once. To impossible things, he said. To remembering, she replied. And as the stars streaked around them, Elliot Thorne, once dead, once forgotten, now reborn and remembered, flew toward a future that existed because two enemies had once chosen to understand rather than destroy. Retriclod can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.